Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Chuck Katzenberger, State Representative, District 108. And the bill we're going to be talking about this morning is House Bill 1103, same bill that we had last year, 1357. What does House Bill 1103 do? It protects First Amendment rights to alternative abortion agencies in Missouri, like pregnancy resource centers that offer free counseling and services to pregnant women in need, and maternity homes that provide once again free housing to pregnant women and their children. Cities, counties, and other political subdivisions of the state cannot enact or enforce laws that interfere with that speech, religious practice, the right to assemble, to alternatives to abortion agencies and their staff and volunteers. Local building codes and fire codes and zoning laws remain in place and can and will be enforced. All this bill does is prohibit government interference in how alternative to abortion agencies advertise and to counsel women who voluntarily come for help. The Supreme Court of the United States has made a huge case in between commercial speech and non-commercial speech. One, an abortion clinic charges a fee for service. Alternative to abortion clinics charge no fee for any service that they do. So the Supreme Court made that very strong distinction there. Also, last couple of years, pro-abortion groups have passed ordinances in Baltimore, Montgomery County, New York City, Austin, and San Francisco to interfere with the First Amendment rights of these organizations. And with that, I have some people to testify, and I'm open for questions, sir.
Are there any questions from the committee? I have one real quick.
Yes, sir.
This, it's been in the media here in the last few weeks about some cases dealing with proximity of advocates for pregnant women and giving them alternatives, proximity to abortion clinics. Is this in that realm?
No, this has to do with alternative to abortion clinics, not the ones of abortion clinics.
So it wouldn't have anything to do with someone who is pro-life being positioned outside an abortion clinic and handing out literature or talking with them as they went by or anything like that?
Well, it may have some because they're often a free service. But I can't, there might be somebody that could give you more, cross that T or dot that I for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you have, go ahead. Proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm well, and you?
Fat and happy.
So explain to me again what problem we're trying to fix.
What the problem that we're trying to fix is the same that we've had the last 2 years that you voted against each of those years. Has to do with the literature and information that alternative to abortion clinics give out.
So how are they restricted?
Well, we're trying to make sure that they're not going to be restricted, because some other cities like Austin and Montgomery City, New York, San Francisco, they have brought bills up, with the cities and counties that they put in place that they have to go through different requirements, and they're limiting their First Amendment rights.
Oh yeah, so I guess that's the conundrum I'm trying to figure out, is if they're protected by the First Amendment, have these municipal ordinances been challenged?
Yes, some of them have been overturned, and all of them are in the process of litigation.
So their First Amendment rights, I think, are, if they're being overturned, that they're protected already under the First Amendment.
Under the First Amendment, that the cities or counties are putting in ordinances limiting the First Amendment rights.
But those are being overturned, if I'm
In process, I mean, but it's a legal process too. Any lawsuit that you have going on for 5 years or so is you got lawyers on both sides. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even millions, depending on how much lawyers. If they lawyer up on this side, they lawyer it's like ping pong.
Yeah. So, but if we pass this, it's conceivable that we would be in litigation if we passed your bill, because it would be challenged.
Or what we're trying to do is make sure that the cities and counties don't put in ordinances. And the Supreme Court is, what they've said, fee for services is held at a lot different standard than no fee for services. If you're out there paying, have a lemonade stand and you're charging for lemonade, you're liable for it. But if you're giving it away, then you're held under a different standard.
Well, I'm thinking again that is the funding stream for these clinics it's solely state dollars?
Pardon?
The funding for alternative to abortion clinics?
Donations. Majority of it is donations.
But they do get state funding.
They do get some periodic state funding.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Cross?
Inquire.
Proceed.
Representative Ganchenberger, if I could sum this up, it seems to me what you're trying to do is take a proactive approach versus a reactive approach to the situation. Is that right?
Yeah, trying to get out in front of it. Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Can I get an idea of how many people are here to testify in favor and how many to testify in
First,
opposition?
we ask the question. Representative Cross.
Is there anybody in opposition? I was asking, no one was going to ask for it, he said.
There were a few hands raised. So we're under a real time constraint now. Let's try to limit our testimony to 3 minutes. 3 minutes for each side, and let's rotate.
Okay, 3 minutes per person. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Samuel Lee with Campaign Life Missouri to speak in favor. I got testimony, my testimony that's been distributed that you can read later, and then testimony from a witness from the Thrive Pregnancy Care Center in St. Louis that has also been distributed. So we're not going to read or talk much about that, except to say that yes, this has been a problem in the last 4 or 5 years or so of local ordinances being passed that interfere with the speech rights and the practices of these agencies. And they would include things like, it's on the bottom of my testimony, bottom of page 1, top of page 2. It would include things like requiring that billboards and Google ads would have to be pre-approved or approved by a local city official in the case of San Francisco. And if they were deemed by that person or some bureaucrat to be misleading or a statement of omission, that they could be charged, they could be penalized or shut down and things like that. We know this is a very controversial issue. And for pro-lifers, to say abortion harms women and to put that in a Google ad may not seem controversial to many of us because we know that's true. But for others in some of these jurisdictions, they may say, well, that's a lie or that's an omission, and we're going to prevent you from saying something like that. And consistently, the courts have said that you cannot restrict these agencies in terms of providing information or providing counsel, including spiritual counsel, to these agencies. To give one other example, the city of Elgin, Illinois, a couple of years ago, passed a local ordinance at apparently the request of one of the city council members who didn't like the local pregnancy care center's mobile medical unit. It's a mobile RV that has ultrasound equipment in there, and they passed an ordinance which had the effect of preventing them from going around and having their medical unit provide care and prenatal vitamins and things like that. It's spelled out here in this memo to you. And the court struck that down, saying it's...
A minute warning.
Okay, so I'm happy to answer your question. Mr. Chairman, to answer your question about will this affect the bubble zone case that's before the Supreme Court today, not really. The only potential effect would be is if a city tried to, like Elgin, Illinois, try to do something to prohibit a mobile medical unit from being outside of an abortion clinic. Then yes, but that's not really a bubble zone. It deals with First Amendment, of course, both of these cases do, but it's not really directly related. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer your questions.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Someone in opposition?
Seeing that.
That's all right. You're back. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Pamela Sumners. I'm the Executive Director of NARA Pro-Choice Missouri, and also a constitutional and civil rights lawyer in a previous life. I think it's important to realize here that everybody would like to protect religious liberty. I know that that certainly was a goal of mine when I worked for the ACLU. I know some of you may think of that as the Antichrist and Lucifer Union, but those of us who worked for it think of it as a champion of religious liberty from all perspectives. I think the thing to look at here is that we're not dealing with a church, and we're not dealing with people who are adherents of a particular religion seeking sheerly religious counsel. We are dealing with facilities that hold themselves out as providing medical materials and advice, and yet they are completely unlicensed and unregulated. I think the better way to look at this bill is not as a First Amendment issue. If there were regulations that were properly drafted and narrowly tailored by municipalities that met First Amendment standards, but instead to look at this as a sort of truth in advertising requirement, since these facilities do hold themselves out as providing medical advice. You can't have it both ways. You can't be exempt from HIPAA requirements, say you're providing medical advice or qualified counseling advice, and yet when we did a study in 2010 and 2011 of 23 of these facilities in the St. Louis metropolitan statistical area and in mid-Missouri, we found that 92% of these facilities do not have any medical or nursing staff at all, and patients or people appearing there did not have an opportunity to receive that sort of material, and that the materials that were being handed out and verbal representations that were made were utterly medically false, according to the Centers for Disease Control, the American Cancer Society, the American Psychological Association, the Mayo Clinic, and numerous well-regarded peer-reviewed journals. I have the entire study. I have copies of all the materials that we gathered that are patently medically false. And I would say everybody's entitled to their beliefs, everybody's entitled to their opinions. They're not entitled to their own set of facts when it comes to medical realities and scientific truths.
Simon, are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. I know that you're aware to leave a witness form.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Diane Vaughn. I'm a registered nurse in the state of Missouri. I am here representing Thrive St. Louis, a pregnancy resource center. I am their regional manager, but for the past 3 years, I was their senior nurse manager. And prior to that, I volunteered for the Pregnancy Resource Center as a professional nurse performing ultrasounds. I'm here to give testimony in support of House Bill 1103. And I believe that as someone who works for a Pregnancy Resource Center, I feel like I can speak in a meaningful way as to why, give reasons why you should support this bill. And so I have a few points. You do have a handout that has been given to you, so I'm not, just to keep things brief, I'm just going to highlight a few things that are on that paper. The first thing is that pregnancy resource centers, such as Thrive St. Louis, we are professionally operated. And therefore, neither needs nor desires the government telling us how to care for our clients. And you can read just the points that display or show how we are professionally operated. The next point is that we do provide a variety of services, some of which are medical services, and that all of these services are indeed free and confidential. And women continue to utilize our services because we have earned their confidence. Thrive St. Louis has been in existence. We are now operating in our 31st year. And so we have this past year alone, we have had over 6,000 client visits to our center. And so we have earned a trust with them, a confidence. And we believe that government dictating or mandating what we should say, what we should not say, would just interfere with that trust that we have earned with them. And then the third point is that PRCs such as Thrive, we provide an alternative to abortion agencies, and we recognize and we do indeed respect the autonomy and the needs of women with an unplanned pregnancy. If there's anything, just as the face of someone who does work, who every day just goes in and wants to do the best job that I can do in service to women, in service to an individual, in service then to a community. PRCs, women going every day, we are doing a good work. But if there's anything that I would really like for you to just to hear is that we believe that because a woman is autonomous, they have the right to know all of the information presented before them. And so that way that she'll be able to make that best decision for them and her unborn child. And so the government doesn't need to mandate just the type of care a woman with an unintended pregnancy is experiencing, as if she's not capable of learning all of the information there is to know. So we at PRCs, we are so just grateful and thankful for your commitment to life and just some of the other legislation that you passed with the PRC tax credit and the safe haven. We just are privileged to be able to serve the community also in those ways. And this past year, we've had at least 1,000 women who truly wanted to carry their child to term and have that choose life. They've been able to do so because they've received the support and care been given. Medically accurate information by medical professionals, have not been coerced, and so.
It is with sadness that I inform you that we are at our time.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Combs.
Okay, I never heard of the organization, okay, but you're a non-for-profit?
Non-for-profit, yes, sir.
Okay. You're a volunteer, right?
I actually volunteered for 3 years as a professional nurse.
That's what I'm getting
before
at.
I
You're a
took on
professional
staff.
nurse, okay?
Mhm.
And I'm sure, well, am I assuming right that there are other professional nurses?
Oh, we have, on staff alone, we have 6 registered nurses. We have
Okay.
2 registered diagnostic medical sonographers. We are supervised by medical physicians, Dr. Carolyn Mark.
You're supervised by medical physicians?
Yes, sir.
You're not just a bunch of volunteers, are you?
No.
You're in addition to volunteering, you have licensed professional people, right?
Yes, and we do have a huge volunteer pool, which really helps us to be able to provide free services. We have volunteer registered nurses that hold current license. We have about 20 volunteer registered nurses who give their time to support women in need.
Thank you, you're being commended.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any further questions? None. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And to the witness forum. Go.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Kelly McNicholas. I'm a practicing OBGYN in St. Louis, Missouri at Washington University in St. Louis, and I have seen most of your faces here as I testified against this same legislation last year. So I actually come today offering a different perspective, not that of anything that has to do with the First Amendment right, but that of the patients that I see and take care of and of their safety. Most oftenly, patients report to me their experiences at these crisis pregnancy centers or pregnancy resource centers are sort of characterized as misleading and deceitful. I'm going to skip a couple of the stories I have for the sake of time, but I am going to tell you one story that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And this is the story of Sarah. Of course, I changed her name for the protection of her privacy, but this is a woman that I encountered actually when I was in training. She came into the emergency room, a 16-year-old with a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And what that means is her pregnancy was outside of her uterus, in her fallopian tube, in a place where it cannot exist and cannot survive. She presented with a medical emergency, was taken to the operating room, at which time she lost her fallopian tube, so the ability to get pregnant from that side of her uterus. It wasn't until actually after her surgery, speaking to her mom about the surgery, that I was told that they actually 4 weeks prior to this visited a crisis pregnancy center in St. Louis, where they were actually ecstatic to find out that she wasn't pregnant. She probably miscarried because they didn't see anything inside her uterus. Well, in fact, they didn't see anything because it wasn't in her uterus to begin with. So they left there under the impression she wasn't pregnant. And they returned in a medical emergency because she was denied appropriately timed medical care. These are the things that actually concern me about pregnancy crisis centers. It's not, I have no problem with people having their own religious beliefs, but you have to tell people that the care that they're getting there is not regulated. I mean, there are lots of things we do as physicians, and we go through lots of regulations, lots of testing, lots of training to be able to provide accurate medical information, and my patients and your constituents deserve that at the very least. Happy to take questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it a fact that the diagnosis of an ectopic pregnancy is made much more frequently in the emergency room than it is in an independent physician's office?
Not necessarily, no.
Are you telling me that it is not the most common presentation that a woman has pain from expanding embryo in the tube? Isn't that the most?
The most common presentation is bleeding and pain. That is correct. It doesn't oftentimes is not isolated to an ER visit. In fact, women with regular care and a regular gynecologist oftentimes will present to their physician for that.
Was this individual that you say was mistreated in the Pregnancy Resource Center, did she present with excruciating pain that is typical of an ectopic pregnancy?
At what point?
When she went to the Pregnancy Resource
She
Center?
presented with first trimester bleeding, which in combination with an ultrasound finding, if you're not capable of diagnosing an ectopic, could very much be misinterpreted as a miscarriage, which is what she was told.
But she didn't present with pain.
That's true.
Would you say that it's within the standard of care that that would not be diagnosed since pain is the
Absolutely
hallmark?
not. A positive pregnancy test and first trimester bleeding with nothing in the uterus absolutely requires further evaluation. And that is the standard of care.
I think you give the impression that the care that was provided at the Pregnancy Resource Center is somehow different from what would be provided in another area.
It was different.
Are
If
there
she
not
presented
licensed
to my-
physicians? Are there not licensed physicians, licensed OB-GYNs staffing the Pregnancy Resource Center?
Not to my knowledge. They are not providing the ultrasound care. They are not following up with these patients.
I suppose we need to
Not in
clarify that.
my experience with this
Can I-
woman, at
can I
least.
break for one moment and ask our previous witness?
Sure.
Is there a licensed obstetrician gynecologist present in your facility?
They supervise our ultrasound reports and write our standing orders. We have certain criteria prior to an ultrasound procedure, so any kind of pain or bleeding that they would have, we do not do an ultrasound. We refer them immediately to an emergency room.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the witness? Thank you very much.
Over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Proceed.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. First of all, you're testifying more against pregnancy crisis centers and less about this bill, correct?
Yeah.
You don't care that they advertise, you just don't want them to exist at all.
I care that they falsely advertise, because what happens is that women with low resource settings who don't have access to care oftentimes go there because they need to access some care, and they are misled in that they're going to get all of the information they need there, when in fact they don't. They oftentimes actually get totally inaccurate information.
And every piece of advertising you put out is completely correct, and there's no reason.
Absolutely. First of all, I don't advertise as a physician. I practice medicine, but every piece of information that I give a patient is based on medical evidence to the best of my knowledge.
And they shouldn't have that same right.
They should have the right to present accurate medical information, not false medical information.
According to who? I mean, if they put out
According
false
to
information and they're
peer-reviewed
putting out-
journals and governing bodies of medical associations and the same sort of standards
So
that
if
all physicians have to
They put out
follow.
the message that an abortion is fatal to the fetus.
Nobody's denying that. I think
But
that
that's basically the type of information they would put out.
that's actually not true. I'd be happy to talk to you about all of the sort of pieces of information on this flyer that I receive every time I drive into the clinic that are medically incorrect.
Okay, now you also brought up the one case that's stuck in your mind forever, can you say in your practice, you've never made a mistake
Absolutely
that
not.
was caught by another physician?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Then
not.
what is the difference?
The difference is that we have standards and we have expectations within the medical practice. We follow protocols, we do things, we are educated and trained to do things appropriately, and that's the way that we do them.
And
We certainly
as-
make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes.
And as this person went to our crisis center, do you think they had the expectation of the finest, top-notch OB/GYN care, or did they go with the expectation just to get a little bit of help and advice and probably what they could afford?
I think they don't go with the expectation of having substandard care.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any further questions?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tyler McClay, General Counsel for the Missouri Catholic Conference. I want to go on record in support of House Bill 1103. Just want to make a couple points. First is that this bill would prevent local municipalities from issuing ordinances or regulations that would regulate these clinics. And to give an example, one of the cases that Sam was talking about, as I recall, it was either the Baltimore case or the Austin case. The regulation in question required the clinic to post in the waiting room that they did not have any doctors on staff, they did not provide abortions, they did not provide contraception, all the other things that they didn't provide. And the court found that that was an infringement on their First Amendment because it required them to provide information at a certain time and in a certain place. And that was the basis for the ruling in part. And so the point, again, if there is a problem, I guess the second point I want to make is this: if there's a problem with these clinics and they're going rogue in providing inaccurate information, that this bill would not preclude this body from issuing laws and rules to regulate them if that was deemed necessary. So this would just, it really is a hedge against local municipalities forcing these clinics to do things that infringe on their First Amendment privileges in terms of when they will present the evidence and the information they present, and the manner in which they do so. And it would prevent them from having to defend expensive lawsuits or have to, start, lawsuits to basically challenge those regulations. These are not highly funded clinics that have lots of money. They do rely primarily on donations. They do get some funding from the state, but the state has an interest in protecting them and in protecting children and having children, because they're going to be the tax base for the future, so that we can do all the things that we do as a state. So, anyway, thank you.
Much quite effective and under your time limit. Are there any questions for this witness? Someone in opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Crystal Williams, and I'm here representing ACLU Missouri, and we're not what she said. And I just want to...
What was that? What was that they said?
Oh, yeah, I don't remember. I'm not going to repeat it. Right, yeah. Oh, no. That I just want to go on record as opposing the bill for reasons that have been already discussed.
Are there any questions for this witness?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Susan Klein, representing Missouri Right to Life, here to go on record in support of the bill. I just want to thank Representative Cross for pointing out that these centers are absolutely have input from qualified physicians and registered nurses. They are on the front line of helping women in crisis pregnancies, and they need our protection to continue to protect women and to save unborn babies.
Testimony, are there any questions? Yes, Representative Cross, proceed.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I don't know this lady that's testified that's an RN, but I do believe this. I'm sure there could come a time when she gets into a situation, maybe something's over her head, okay? And that's fine, that happens to anybody, okay? But I am convinced if it's over her head, she will refer that person to somebody, a licensed physician in that field.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further questions? One more in favor and one more opposed. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ryan Summerford, and I'm the statewide Missouri Government Affairs Manager for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Missouri. And I am here today to testify opposed to House Bill 1103. Our bottom line is that pregnancy resource centers do nothing to keep women and pregnant women healthy. In fact, a majority of these facilities are run by anti-abortion organizations who deceptively market themselves as a healthcare facility. A vast majority of these are not medical professions and are not licensed by the state. Women's health is often put at risk, and women's health staff at these centers are opposed to all forms of contraceptive, including birth control, contraceptive, and they are pushing an anti-abortion agenda instead of addressing and listening to the needs and concerns of the patients. Pregnancy resource centers do not offer referrals to reproductive health care that a woman may need, and even when referrals are specifically requested. This means a woman's reproductive health care can be delayed, risking her health and safety. Information should not be provided with the intent of coercing, shaming, or judging a woman. And with that, I'd like to take questions here in the committee.
Why?
Briefly, to inquire. I'm an attorney by trade. The bill is really not about the Pregnancy Resource Center itself and things you just talked about. This is about legislation to control a local municipality in a speech issue by them. I'm very conscious of First Amendment rights. I would be just as conscious if this were a very conservative Southwest community that was passing a law to prevent you from stating your message. I may not agree with your message, but a municipality does not have the right to infringe on a First Amendment right. And I have concerns when we have organizations that represent civil liberties that are saying, "Oh, this one's okay. This is good. We can get rid of this one. We can squelch this speech. This is okay." I would, if we had the other side in here saying, "No, these pregnancy resource center guys, we're going to," or your Planned Parenthoods are not going to get to have advertising. They're not going to have billboards. We're going to regulate. You're going to have to run through me what you're going to say. I would have a problem with that. And I would hope you guys, I mean, take this beyond you're not liking your counterparts. This is about the right to speak and to state your opinion. This isn't about the medical care the person's getting in the room. And I would hope you would want, your organization would want to defend that right for you and for the people you don't agree with. That is what we need to do. This is about speech. This is not about the care, the lack of care, the things we've heard about in here. And so I would hope your organization would be wanting to protect everybody's speech.
I would agree, and I think that we all can agree and come to terms of the importance of First Amendment speech and protecting that. We are bringing it back to the deceptiveness of that speech, and just as you mentioned, Planned Parenthood is currently regulated by the state. And we have over 30 laws and statute of regulations of putting information together and how we treat our patients, including following HIPAA privacy regulations and such. I think we can all agree that religious freedoms are of importance. However, we feel that this bill, House Bill 1103, is really, we're concerned about the message and making sure we're keeping women and pregnant women healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to take this opportunity to particularly thank you, Representative White. Had my undergraduate degree been in law instead of pharmacy, I probably would have had a better handle on the proceedings dealing with this bill from the beginning, because you very succinctly point out that it really is about these constitutionally guaranteed rights and not about some of the other things that we've kind of allowed our discussion to get off into. I want to thank you for your testimony. I think that does make it 4 and 4, so we have had equal opportunity. Anyone else who is still here to testify, either in favor or opposed, could you please just note your opposition or your support?
And make it form out.
And of course, written testimony is most welcome and will be distributed.
If you don't make a form out, you weren't here.
If you would like, you can tell us who you're from and who you represent.
I'm Bonnie Lee from Columbia, Missouri, and I'm actually here personally, been in support as an RN and research nurse, and someone who's been and also as board director for Crisis Pregnancy Center. I'm here to support.
Thank you for being here, and you did leave a form.
Yes.
Yes.
You-
My name is Joanne Schrader, and I am here in support of House Bill 1103. I'm just here as an individual. I do believe that we had 2 opponents as opposed to one, in between the ACLU woman and the Planned Parenthood.
I have a list of
lobbyist.
everyone who testified, and we have 4 on each side.
Okay.
So try to take note of these things.
I like the fact that we're going alternating instead of like all in favor and then all
I think
opposed.
it's the best way in this case as well.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to register their testimony?
Hello, my name is Kathy Ford, and I'm here in support of House Bill 1103 as an individual and also as a concerned individual.
Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kerry Messer on behalf of the Missouri Family Network, the Missouri Baptist Convention, Christian Life Commission, Americans United for Life, and also the Alliance for Life Missouri, which is the largest network of alternative abortion agencies in the state. I had points that haven't been covered, but I can visit with you afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Representative, do you have any concluding remarks?
Just briefly, as the representative pointed out, where we were going, we're getting into the weeds, it had nothing to do with this bill. This is a First Amendment rights bill. I have volunteered at 2 different crisis pregnancy environments. They've always had medical directors, they have standing orders, there's nurses, they just have me to fill out paperwork and take trash out, things like that. So everyone that I've seen, they give me a job, I can do that. Everyone that I've seen has been extremely professional. And once again, I want to put us back on the tracks again, saying this is a First Amendment right. And there's a huge distinction by the U.S. Supreme Court for fee-for-service, non-fee-for-service. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. That will conclude our hearing on House Bill 1103.
Thank you.
We now